Good evening, children. So, today we are going to start our first chapter in biology, that is the fundamental unit of life. So, in this chapter, we will discuss first about the introduction, what is cell, then we will discuss about the different discoveries related to cell, unicellular and multicellular organisms, what is the living organism made up of, and the final part is what is the structural organization of cell. So, let's start with our introduction. So it says that any structure of a plant or animal is when seen under a microscope, we will see that it is composed of many small tiny compartments or units which are known as cells. Cells are very small in structure and we cannot see them with our naked eyes. So to observe a cell, we need to observe it under a microscope. So we can say that cell is the smallest structural and functional unit of life. There are two types of cell, such as prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. So if you will study further, you will come to know that prokaryotic cells are the primitive type of cells which devoid true nucleus, and it is mainly found in the bacterial cell. So bacterial cell is the best example of a prokaryotic cell. On the other hand, the cells which have true nucleus, means in which you will find a well developed nucleus, is known as eukaryotic cell. And the example of eukaryotic cell is plant cell and animal cell. So this is the structure of a cell which you can see in the slides. These are the structures found in a cork cell. So when we start with the discoveries, first we will see that the cell is being discovered by the scientist Robert Hooke in the year 1665. So Robert Hooke was a scientist, and he has taken a slice of cork and observed it under a microscope. Cork is nothing but it is a substance which comes from the bark of a tree. When Robert Hooke has taken the slice of the cork under a microscope, he has seen that there are many small tiny compartments which resembles a honeycomb-like structure in the cork slide. Then he came to the conclusion and he called them as cells. So cells are nothing but tiny small units which is present in the cork cell. So in the year 1665, cell was first discovered, and cell is actually a Latin word which means a little room. So in the slides you can see the structure of the cork observed under the microscope. This is how it looks. Then apart from cell, there are other different discoveries made, like free living cells have been found in pond water, which is generally identified as bacteria by the scientist Anton van Leeuwenhoek in the year 1671. The nucleus was discovered by Robert Brown in the year 1831, followed by protoplasm discovered by Perkenzie in the year 1839. And after discovering of the cell, then comes the cell theory. There were two scientists mainly related with the cell theory. They were Sladen and Swan. Sladen was a botanist who used to work on the plant cells. While he was working on the plant cell, he has seen that the plant cells are composed of many different type of cells which group together to form the tissues in the plant body in the year 1838. While on the other hand, Swan was a zoologist who was working on the animals, and he found that all the animal cells are being surrounded by a covering which is known as cell membrane. Cell membrane is found in both plant and animal cells, but in addition to cell membrane, plant cells also have a cell wall. So both these scientists, Sladen and Swan, in the year 1838 and 39, working on the plants and animals respectively, have postulated two theories on cell theory. Saying that all the plants and animals are composed of cells, and number two, cell is the basic unit of life. After them, another scientist came in the year 1855 whose name was Virchow. He proposed that all cells arise from pre-existing cells. So the cell theory has three postulates. All these plants and animals are composed of cells. Cell is the basic unit of life, and all cells arise from pre-existing cells. There is a saying for this: all cells arise from pre-existing cells, known as omnis cellula e cellula. So this is all about the cell theory, which is being proposed by Sladen, Swan, and modified by Virchow. Our next topic is, what are the living organisms made up of? So as we have seen that all the organisms are made up of small units known as cells. So all living cells are organisms are made up of cells. Cells are very small and can be seen under a microscope, as we all know. Cells can be easily seen in an onion peel. So if you want to see a cell in practical, then we can observe it in a onion peel. So we can do this activity in the lab. So we can also say that shape and size of the cell varies according to the function. The shape size may be cuboidal, polygonal, elliptical, round, oval, and elongated. Suppose there are some organisms in which the cells doesn't have a particular shape and size. For example, amoeba. You must have all know about amoeba. Amoeba is a unicellular organism and it doesn't have a particular shape and size of its own. But when you talk about other higher organisms like human beings, then in human beings every cell is having a particular shape and size. Suppose RBC is oval in shape. If you take nerve cell, the nerve cell is elongated in shape. So cells don't have particular shape and size, but in higher organisms cells are being differentiated according to its function and they have a proper shape and size. So if we will see that smallest cell is PPLO. The full form of PPLO is pleuropneumonia like organisms. It is also called mycoplasma. Mycoplasma is a bacterial cell which has only cell membrane but it lacks cell wall. The largest cell is Ostrich-egg, which is about 15 centimeter in diameter. The smallest cell in our human body is red blood cells, which is also known as RBC, and the largest cell in our body is nerve cell, which is also known as neuron. So these are the diagrams shown in the slides. Like first one is smallest cell, which is RBC. The largest cell is the first one is the smallest cell, that is PPLO, mycoplasmas, which is being observed under the microscope. You can see the mycoplasma colony is being showed because they are found in groups. Second one is the largest cell of, that is Ostrich-egg. The third one is the smallest cell in our body, that is RBC, which is biconcave in shape. And the fourth one is the largest cell in our body, that is nerve cell, or you can say neuron. Okay. So next is unicellular and multicellular organisms. Now we have classified the organisms based on the number of cells present in their bodies as unicellular and multicellular organisms. Unicellular consists of two words, uni and cellular. Uni means single and cellular means cells. If the organism's body is made up of single cell, then such organisms are said to be unicellular organisms. And in unicellular organisms, that single cell is capable of performing all the essential activities and functions of the cell. For example, amoeba, euglena, bacteria, paramecium, chlamydomonas. These all organisms comes under the category unicellular organisms. On the other hand, multicellular organisms. Multi means many and cellular means cells. So when an organism is made up of more than one cell or many cells, then such type of organisms comes under the category multicellular organisms. So examples are fungi, plants, and animals. In these multicellular organisms, you can see that they are made up of different types of cells having different structures and specific functions of their own. In multicellular organisms, you will also find division of labor. Suppose if you take the example of human beings. In human beings, heart is responsible for pumping blood, stomach is responsible for the digestion of food. So we can see that every organ is responsible for their specific functions. That means they have division of labor, that what function what cells are going to perform. So you can also, and the second property is that cells are produced from the single cell. Now you may ask how. So you all know that when a cell divides, it produces two and more cells. So all the multicellular organisms have arisen from a single cell. So we can say that all the cells comes from the pre-existing cells. Organisms, like first one is the diagram of an amoeba, second one is paramecium, third one is a bacterial cell. Then multicellular organism, the first one is the diagram of fungi showing multicellular organisms, and plants and animals. So all the plants, animals, and fungi are the examples of multicellular organisms. The last topic is structural organization of a cell. You all know that all the living organisms are made up of cells, and cells are very small in size that we cannot see it under with our naked eyes. So to see a cell we need a microscope. So when we see under a microscope, you will see that cell, like how we forms on this earth. So every cell has a specific components within it which are known as cell organelles, which together makes a cell, which is the basic unit of life. All the cell organelles, irrespective of the functions they perform, or which organism they come from, are all the same, and they are found in every cell of the body. When we see a cell under a microscope, we will see that all the cells are having a basic structure, and this basic structure is, they must have a cell membrane, which is known as plasma membrane. They must have a nucleus, and they must have a cytoplasm. So all these three components are the basic structural organization of a cell. Any cell, irrespective of the organism they come from, whether they're unicellular or multicellular, in every cell you will find these three basic components. These are plasma membrane, also known as cell membrane, nucleus, and cytoplasm. You all know that plant cells have cell wall in addition to the cell membrane. So let's talk about plasma membrane. Cell membrane is also known as plasma membrane. Plasma membrane was discovered by C. Magellan and C. Kramer in the year 1855. It is the outermost covering of the cell, except plant cell, because in plant cell wall is present that separates the contents of the cell from its. This is the figure of a plasma membrane, which is showing how a plasma membrane is made up of. It allows the entry and exit of some materials like ions and molecules in and out of the cell. It also prevents the movement of some other materials. That's why it is also known as selectively permeable membrane. That means it allows selective molecules to pass through its membrane. If you see a plasma membrane, you can see that there is a head, white color head, and a black color tail. So these two are lipid molecules, and the structures which are standing on its surface are known as protein molecules. So we can say that it is a very thin, elastic, living, and selectively permeable membrane, and it is made up of lipid and proteins, phospholipid molecules. Actually the plasma membrane is made up of phospholipids, that means proteins as well as lipids molecules. This is the basic structure of a plasma membrane. All the proteins present on its surface helps in the transport of some bigger substances in and outside of the cell. It also encloses the nucleus and cytoplasm. In every cell, the outermost covering is this plasma membrane, and inside it we have nucleus and cytoplasm. So we can say that it encloses nucleus and cytoplasm. It also helps in protection of the cellular components. As now I have told you that every cell has cell organelles within it. So this cell membrane not only encloses this nucleus and cytoplasm within it, but it also protects all the cell organelles which is present in the cell. Next is, how does the movement of substance takes place into the cell? How do substances move out of the cell? Now, since we have learned that plasma membrane is the outermost covering which helps in the movement of molecules. So now in this slide, we will see that how it is going to move in and out of the cell. So basically, there are two main processes by which the movement of molecules takes place in and out of the cell. The first one is diffusion. Diffusion is nothing but it is the spontaneous movement of molecules, especially gaseous molecules, from higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. It doesn't need any semi-permeable membrane to pass. The diffusion plays an important role in the gaseous exchange between the cells as well as cells and its external environment. So gaseous exchange may take place in between the cells or cells and its external environment. Okay. Significance of diffusion. There are so many advantages of having diffusion. For example, gaseous exchange between the leaves and air takes place. You all know that plants perform respiration, so for the gaseous exchange they must have they must have diffusion process within them. Next is transport of food through the phloem takes place. You all know that phloem helps in the transportation of food, so in that transportation of food we need diffusion. The loss of water by the process of transpiration from the plants is also based on the principle of diffusion. And the last one is movement of ions and solutes from one cell to another cell takes place through diffusion. The second type of movement, which is very much essential, is osmosis. The movement of water molecules through a selectively permeable membrane from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration is called osmosis. Now again, osmosis has several advantages. Basically it is done in the case of water molecules. In the figure you can see that in the first case we have a mixture of concentrated sugar solution. Concentrated sugar solution means that has more sugar and less water. Okay, that red molecules are sugar molecules and the blue color ones are the water molecules. Okay, and on the other side we have done a partition with the help of semi-permeable membrane. On the other side we have a dilute sugar solution. It means that it has more water molecules and less sugar molecules. Okay, so how osmosis will take place, you all know, from higher concentration to lower concentration. So on the left side, whose concentration is higher? Sugar concentration is higher and water concentration is less. On the right side, water concentration is more and the sugar concentration is less. So we all know that movement of the molecules will take place from higher concentration to lower concentration of water molecules. So from the right side, the blue dots, that is water molecules, will pass into the left side through a semi-permeable membrane. This is what is osmosis all about. Now, significance of osmosis, there are so many significance of osmosis. The first one is absorption of water by roots and root hairs. You all know that root is responsible for the absorption of water from the soil, water and minerals. So who is helping them? Which process is helping them to absorb water and minerals from the soil? That is osmosis. Water moves from one cell to another cell. It is because of osmosis. That is why, because the water molecules has to pass the cell membrane. Next, it controls the amount of water within the cell. Okay, it also maintains, you can say that it also maintains the turgidity of the cell. Next is it controls various physiological activities like opening and closing of stomata. Okay, so when the leaf surface is having more water, the guard cells will absorb water, it will swell. As a result, the stomata will open. So it also helps in the opening and closing of stomata. Splitting of fruits due to over irrigation, because the fruits will swell and it will undergo dehiscence, and dehiscence of fruits and seeds for dispersal. These are all the significance of having osmosis.